Have you ever watched Pedri play and felt something strangely familiar? Not the speed, not the strength, something else. That calm, that pause, that control. And then, almost without noticing, a name echoes in your mind: Iniesta. But here's the uncomfortable question. Are we actually seeing similarities, or are we forcing nostalgia? Compared to other players his age, Pedri doesn't dominate through power or explosiveness. He dominates through rhythm. And rhythm is dangerous, because it reminds us of things we loved before we even understood what we're watching now. Because replacing Iniesta isn't about stats. It's not about assists, trophies, or highlights compared to other players. It's about something much harder to measure: control inside chaos. And before we rush to label Pedri as anything, we need to understand why our minds make that connection so quickly and what that really says about us. Comparing young players to legends is like comparing a new song to a classic. Sometimes it's not about quality, it's about memory. When people compare Pedri to Iniesta, they're not just analyzing football, they're revisiting emotions. Compared to other players, Pedri carries a stylistic resemblance, sure, but nostalgia has a way of amplifying similarities and quietly ignoring differences. Think about Prime Iniesta at FC Barcelona, the composure in UEFA Champions League nights, the intelligence under pressure, the defining presence in a FIFA World Cup. Those moments weren't built in a season, they were carved over years. And when Pedri shows flashes of that calm, the mind immediately connects dots that might not even be fully drawn yet. The danger? We stop watching Pedri for who he is. We start watching him as a reflection of Iniesta. Compared to other players his generation, that's an unfair weight to carry. Legends become standards, standards become expectations, and expectations can distort reality. So before diving into whether the comparison makes sense, it's worth asking, what exactly are people feeling when they say, "He reminds me of Iniesta"? Some players run faster, others think faster, and that's where the comparison between Pedri and Iniesta really begins. Compared to other players, both seem to operate in a slightly different mental tempo. It's not about sprint speed, it's about decision speed. While everyone else reacts, they anticipate. And anticipation in football feels almost like magic. Then comes the pause, that subtle half-second that changes everything. It's like traffic at rush hour, everyone accelerating, everyone rushing, and suddenly one driver taps the brake for just a moment. That pause reorganizes the entire flow. Iniesta mastered that disruption. Pedri does it too. Compared to other players who force verticality, he allows the game to breathe, and that breathing space creates opportunity. And watch the body orientation. It's subtle, almost invisible if you're not paying attention. Both Iniesta and Pedri receive the ball already positioned for the next action. They're not just controlling the ball, they're controlling the next two moves. Compared to other players who adjust after receiving, they prepare before receiving. That's not flair, that's intelligence. And once you start noticing it, you can't unsee it, which makes the next question even more uncomfortable. Now let's slow down for a second, because similarity in style doesn't mean similarity in legacy. Pedri may remind people of Iniesta, but legacy isn't built on resemblance, it's built on decisive moments. Compared to other players his age, Pedri is extraordinary, but compared to Iniesta in finals, that's a different conversation entirely. Iniesta didn't just control games, he decided them. UEFA Champions League nights, a FIFA World Cup final goal, moments that froze time. Pedri, on the other hand, is still writing his story. He hasn't yet carried the emotional weight of a defining final, the kind that shifts how history remembers you. And that's not criticism, that's timing. Because here's the truth most fans avoid. Potential feels exciting, but impact feels eternal. Compared to other players, Pedri's ceiling looks special. But compared to Iniesta's most iconic moments, the scale changes. One built mystique through decisive history. The other is still building chapters. And understanding that difference is what separates hype from mature analysis, which leads to something even more interesting. Here's where the conversation levels up. Maybe the reason Pedri gets compared to Iniesta isn't just about style, it's about scarcity. Modern football is obsessed with intensity, transitions, vertical runs. Compared to other players in today's game, everything feels faster, louder, more explosive. And in the middle of that chaos, someone who slows things down almost feels rebellious. Pedri does something rare in this era. He reduces noise. He doesn't rush the pass just because the tempo demands it. He doesn't force the vertical ball just to match the rhythm. Compared to other players who thrive in acceleration, he thrives in control. And that control triggers memory. It reminds people of Iniesta not because they're identical, but because that archetype has almost disappeared. He slows the game down in an era obsessed with speed.
and that contrast makes him stand out even more. When fans see that composure, they don't just see quality, they see familiarity. Compared to other players shaped by pressing systems and rapid transitions, Pedri feels like a throwback. And maybe that's why the comparison keeps resurfacing, which brings us to the real debate. Pedri isn't Iniesta, and maybe he never will be. Compared to other players of his generation, he already stands out in a rare way, but legacy isn't inherited, it's earned. Iniesta built his name through moments that became history. Pedri is still building his timeline, and that difference matters more than nostalgia wants to admit. But here's the nuance. If what made Iniesta special wasn't just trophies, but control over chaos, then yes, Pedri might be the closest thing we've seen in years. Not identical, not a replica, just familiar in essence. Compared to other players who dominate physically, he dominates emotionally. And that subtle dominance is what triggers the comparison again and again. Or maybe we're just looking for ghosts of the past. So when you watch Pedri, what do you actually see? A future legend in the making, or simply a talented midfielder shaped by memory bias? Drop your opinion in the comments. I really want to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy deep football analysis like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we're just getting started exploring what truly separates great players from unforgettable ones.